what's our mission? What are our core values? That should guide everything that we do. And if you don't align, that's okay, but you're probably not in the right place.
Welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. I am stoked. We have with us today someone I have been trying to get on this show for what feels like forever. I am so glad that he's finally here. Keith Weightman, who is the RVP of Sales at Bullhorn, who, if you're not getting his newsletter, you need to. I don't open a ton of newsletters, but every weekend, he delivers simple tips that help deliver big time impact, combining sales, writing, and most importantly, the power of visualization, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Dale, take some notes here. Keith, thanks for joining the show, man.
I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad we could finally make it work out. So
I mean, other than the fact that Dale was 15 minutes late.
We'll give him a pass.
We'll give him a pass. We will not make the episode 15 minutes, though. We'll make it work.
Awesome. Keith, thanks for joining. And we've known each other for a bit of time. Ever since like back in the Smart Action days, so it's been a bit of time since we've been chatting. But let's start off with this question. You've been in sales for a long time. It's time to reimagine your role. Let's say you have to leave sales and go to some other revenue department. What department would that be and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Can I say no? I don't want to go to another.
You got to pick one other place.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe sales ops, sales operations.
You were going to say marketing. Like with all your visualization and all your like pieces, I was like, he's definitely going to say marketing, but operations, you see operations as well.
Yeah. I mean, I like the process side of things. I like to, look at the bigger picture, but marketing's another one I could, you threw me with that question. I wasn't prepared for that one this early in the morning.
Let's talk marketing, sales ops, as it all comes together. I think, Keith, one of the things that fascinates me, and you and I were talking about this a little before, you've been at Bullhorn almost 12 years, right? 11 and a half years. That is unheard of in today's day and age for any revenue leader who typically has an average tenure of 18 months to be someplace for that long. And part of me thinks that is because of, in part, cross-collaborative, working with marketing, working with ops, working, with everyone and having this relationship that makes you want to stay. But talk to the audience, specifically founders who have this general belief, oh, no one's going to be here more than a year. It's impossible. Like, you're living proof, man, 11 and a half years. What does it take and why did you stay 11 and a half years?
Yeah, it's a loaded question, but I'm a big believer that people work for people. They don't work for companies. And I happened to start at Bullhorn in 2013. I started the same day that my leader started. So we were in like the same sales boot camp. And I've been with him since then. And, I look at, okay, well, I've been here for 11 years. And then I look at my CRO. He's been at Bullhorn for 18 years. Wow. And our president's been there for 19 years. Our founder is still there. And I didn't come in as a leader. I came in as an AE and I worked my way up. I had opportunities to grow and we had good people. We had the best product in our niche and I was always hitting the number. So it was like, why would I look to go somewhere else? Like I was always like overachieving. So I felt like I had the right people, the right product, the right environment for me to succeed. And, for founders out there or for sellers listening, like if you find that, like think really hard about leaving to try and go get a bigger, OTE somewhere else because, it's hard to get all of those in one single spot.
Yeah, it's funny. So and Dale can tell you this because he actually coached me through this a little bit. I certainly was one who suffered from shiny object syndrome. Grass is greener, a little bit more money or better product and, going to go jump and make that move. And 8 times out of 10, it probably backfired. I think there's something for that stability. And I think founders need to realize how you open this is the most important thing. People work for people. If you surround your team with great people, and I love how you said your leader, not your boss, not your manager. That's a word that Dale and I use a lot. If you surround yourself with great leaders, your people are much more likely to stay, be invested, and help you grow the business. And I promise you, you're going to grow your business better with people who are there 3, 5, 7, 10 years versus this rotating door at 18 months. Kudos to you for staying that long, man.
Yeah, and I can attest, like, Donnie's amazing. I've worked with Donnie a little bit. He's an amazing leader. And I also think, you know, the people that you had working with you as well, like, you know, me and you both know Matt really well. Matt was amazing. Like, it's not only the people that are leaders, it's also the people that work with you or for you. If you go through that process, it's easier when you're not trying to have to babysit people or like bring them along. Like, they're all on that ride together with you. I think it makes it much more easy for you to go through that process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about building the right culture. And I think Bullhorn has done a really good job of that. Not only just my leader, but our founder that's still with the organization. Like, I mean, it all starts from him and it trickles down. 100%. He's the one that's created the culture that has permeated through the rest of the organization. And he's part of the big reason why I'm here as well. Like, I believe in him. I believe in the direction. And he's still very actively involved when we need him, which is, you know, super helpful as we've continued to get larger.
Awesome. So we believe a lot in, like, there's failure that happens as you're growing the business. I mean, you've been there for 11 years. You've probably seen ups and downs. What's one of the things that you've learned that you failed at, but you learned through, and give the audience like a couple of things on how you can change failure from a setback to a setup?
Yeah. Well, I've certainly failed a lot. And I think that's part of, you know, I'm a very competitive person, so I don't like losing at anything. But, you know, one of the things,
go figure, and you're in sales. Imagine that.
Yeah, I know. One of the things that I think that we failed at early on was acquisitions. So since I've been at Bullhorn, we've made like, I don't know, 13 or 14 different acquisitions. And acquiring these companies and bringing them in, we talk about building a culture, right? Well, a lot of these companies, there's some shared similarities in the culture, but it's also, there's a lot of differences. So trying to integrate people in and trying to create the right resources to make that seamless was very difficult. And it was hard on customers. Like, customers hated it because it was a change. We lost customers along the way, which was super frustrating. And we had to rethink the next time we did an acquisition. We got to learn from all the lessons that we did. How do we make it better next time so we can make it a repeatable process? Because that was part of the strategy for us to continue to grow. We were going to go acquire companies that complemented our tool set to be able to add more solutions to what we sell and expand the share of wallet. So I think just integrating new people into the organization and taking their processes and integrating with ours, we failed at that for, you know, our first couple of acquisitions. So
what's a couple of things that, as founders are thinking about acquisition, that they can do to like prevent some of that stuff? Is it better due diligence? Like, I mean, you do a bunch of due diligence. Like, what are the things that you can do? And you're an operational guy. Maybe it's the operational side.
Yeah, I think it was more on the operational side of, like, when we first did we had teams and there was due diligence on the financial pieces of it and all of that. But it's more of like, okay, now once we do it, what's actually going to happen? What are the action steps? What's the team that's involved? And as we continue to make more, we put together operational teams to say, okay, here are like the key customers that they're the people we're calling on the first day to let them know what's our strategy, what's our plan, how we rolling down that message to the rest of the field on why we're making this acquisition, why it matters to them, what's our plan and what's our strategy, so that everybody's on the same page. So I think it's more around the planning, the messaging, having a right team involved, and making sure the acquisition actually complements what you're actually, you know,
and systems, right? I mean, someone may be on HubSpot versus Salesforce, and now you got to convert. Like there's some of these things that you don't think about. And I think it's a little bit like an investment like for a founder, like when they're going to get a Series A, like how do you map the investor to what's happening with the founder? Like, do you kind of like jive together? And then like if you're converting all of your customers from Salesforce into HubSpot or HubSpot into Salesforce, like that's a big migration that, you know, could be 2, 3, 4 months. We know we had to convert a customer to a brand new instance of HubSpot. It's difficult.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm surrounded by some really smart people that know how to help and make that come to fruition. So again, it goes back to, you know, I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of great people at Bullhorn.
Awesome.
That's so refreshing to hear, because we talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, like I have this one person I like or two people I like, but like hearing like there's this whole team, right? Like a lot of great people. And I think that speaks to the company and probably yourself as a leader as well. When you look at growing an org and you look at what I'll call broader alignment, right? You have to align sales, marketing, success, RevOps, pre-sales, and solution engineering, all of that stuff. A lot of people, I think, get that wrong. And I arguably think alignment is becoming more of what I'll call like a bullshit term. Like we don't have to align. We might have to agree and move forward, but like we're probably not going to align, but we need to pick the best path. As you've been growing teams and as you've, you know, come up through the ranks over 11 years, what are some creative approaches you take to drive that cross-functional alignment? Because you're working big deals. Like you're not on the SMB side. Like that requires a lot of alignment. How do you step outside of the box and encourage your team to step outside of the box to really drive this cross-functional, I'll say, unity instead of alignment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, again, I might be sheltered because I've been Bullhorn for so long that we've built such a good collaborative teamwork between our solutions consultants that are the technical experts that are going to demo, professional services that will deliver, or we work with a lot of systems integrators that will go and implement the product, support. I think a lot of it comes down to the bigger deals that you work, you almost have to build better internal relationships. Than not necessarily external, but you can't disregard the need to build those internal relationships, because that's what really makes a deal go forward. When you're like, crap, this customer has a specific need around understanding our support model, or they want to understand a roadmap better. Well, it's better coming from the lead of the product than from a salesperson. So how can I create the picture with internally, like, here's where I need you and here's why. And it's building those internal alliances to help you move things forward. And I think it's more around it's just creating that environment that everybody at Bullhorn's willing to help. And again, I don't know if it's something that I can really break down the why behind it, other than that's our culture. It's ownership. It's being human. It's, you know, speed and urgency. So, you know,
but that's it right there. You actually did just answer the question. That's the culture. The culture is ownership. The culture is being human. The culture is speed and urgency. How many cultures, Dale, have you worked for where the culture is like, I'll get to it when I get to it? Like there is no urgency. Being human, like I no joke, had a founder, Keith, call me on pre-planned PTO in Scottsdale, Arizona, and said, you need to come back because I'm working and you need to be working and you're not allowed to take time off. Like what's human about that? So what you just said is the answer. That's how you drive that alignment, is that culture. There's not enough emphasis in my mind placed on the importance of what makes culture. And culture isn't wine on tap and beer on tap and beanbags in the office. Culture is everything that you just spoke about.
Yeah, that, like, to me, that scenario that you just mentioned, like, that's like so foreign to me. Like, I've never had that.
It's the day Dale convinced me to go out on my own.
That was probably a pretty easy decision after getting that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dale could have told me I'd make $10 a year on that day, and I would have been great. Where do I sign?
It was months in the making, Keith. Months in the making, but so let's double click a little on culture, because I think it's easy to say it starts at the top, and because I do think that's where it all starts or fails. But how do you instill that culture? Like, let's give the audience a bit of like, how do you instill that culture below as you're like building your team so that they can see the culture? Because they're probably not seeing as much from the Bullhorn founder that you have, you have that such big, long relationship with. How do you instill that culture with your team as they come on board?
People buy from people. That's why companies who invest in meaningful connections win. The best part? Gifting doesn't have to be expensive to drive results, just thoughtful. Sendoso's intelligent gifting platform is designed to boost personalized engagement throughout the entire sales process. Trust me, I led sales for a Sendoso competitor, and I could tell you no one does gifting better than Sendoso. If you're looking for a proven way to win and retain more customers, visit sendoso.com.
Yeah. Well, part of that, I'll almost say they actually do have so we do quarterly all hands. And at the beginning of every all hands, we go over what's the mission. The mission is to create incredible customer experience. And that's what the entire people at Bullhorn rally around. It's like, if I'm asked to do something and it's going to help create a better experience for the customer, then I'm going to do it because that's our mission as an organization. And he always goes over the core values of the organization. Every single one, doesn't matter. And then we focus on one each quarter, like a different core value each quarter. And, that way. And then at the end, someone gets an award based on who's exemplifying that core value. Like, service, who's actually done it, what have they done and why? And we do like a little like award ceremony each quarterly hands, because it all goes back to what's our mission, what are our core values. That should guide everything that we do. And if you don't align, that's okay, but you're probably not in the right place.
Right. It's a good way. It's a good way to weed people out that are looking for something different or don't align. But you said something very interesting, which was every quarter you guys are doing this. And I think it's easy when companies are smaller. Like, I don't know, if you're under 50 people, under 75 people, to have that quarterly meeting. But now that you guys are continuously doing the quarterly meeting, even as you grow up 10 years later, it's very commendable, because I think people now want to target to that quarterly meeting type of thing. So interesting.
Yeah. And we've been doing that since I've been here. Now Bullhorn, we're about $500 million, about 1,300 people. So the fact that we've continued to create that consistency, and again, it all comes from Art, who's the founder, and it adds that consistency, means a lot to the employees. I don't think I've met one person that I've hired that are not like, man, he's so inspiring, or he's so like, he's genuine. He's not like a rah-rah person. He's very genuine. He's authentic. He's realistic. And when things aren't going well, like, as you guys know, like the last, 2023 and the beginning of 2024 has been tough. And he's not the type that's like, okay, we're just going to go do more, or like, oh, that's not really the case. We got to do this. It's like, look, I understand, like, the data is there,
right,
but we do need to focus on the things that we can control. And these are the things that we can control. So this is where we're going to go, because when there's a snapback, we've already got the foundation to take it to the next level.
Control the controllables.
What a concept. Let's shift gears a little. So this was the first time you and I have met in person. I have subscribed to your newsletter for a while. I actually think I've messaged you many, many months back and was like, this is one of the few ones I actually read to benefit from, not just to help our newsletter and see what else is out there. And I do. I read it every morning. I probably have a dozen of them saved in a file that I go back to. And you focus very heavily on the power of visualization. There was a point where I thought that all of those drawings were like things you downloaded from I have no artistic ability. So like anyone who could draw anything other than like a little stick figure blows my mind. But I think you do a really good job at highlighting how visualization can help close sales, can help you understand, like, whatever it happens to be. Talk to me about where this mindset came from, because most salespeople are not visual people. So I love that you're kind of like changing the status quo and driving that in a way that I personally find to be extremely relatable.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. And so it was 2009. I was working at Ceridian. I was this was my first job in SaaS. And I was working with a senior solutions consultant on this big deal. Just came in as an inbound. We were going on site to see them. He shows up and he's got like this architect tube on his back. I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, you'll see. All right. So we get in there and he unscrews it. He dumps out a bunch of markers. He's got rolled up paper and he starts putting them all over the wall. And he's like, hey, it was a discovery meeting. He's like, this is going to be different than probably meetings that you've done in the past where you sit across the table and we ask questions. He's like, and this is to the customer. We're going to really sit and we're going to write down, we'll process map. What are the challenges? What are you focused on? What is the current state? Where are you looking to go? And it was like one of the I still remember it to this day. It was like the best meeting I've ever been on because super collaborative. The customer would pick up the mark and be like, actually, it's this. And then they were like, hey, can you keep that here? Or can we take a picture of it? And from that day, I was like, okay, I got to learn how to do this because my previous meetings were like, I'm asking them questions from a script or I've got a PowerPoint deck and I can tell like they've done this with like 4 other people already. And it just wasn't very valuable. So I'm like, how can I do something different? Not just to be different, but it's also going to add value to the meeting. And for me, it was around learning how to whiteboard and have conversations without the necessity of a deck as a crutch. And it helped me better internalize the message because I don't have that crutch of a deck. You have to practice it. And it was different. So, I've always been a big fan. And I think it also helps with creativity, which is extremely important as a seller, is to be able to think outside of the box and do things differently. So that's kind of the origin story, I guess.
Does your team whiteboard?
Certain people on my team whiteboard. I certainly don't press them because it is a skill that you can build, but just like any skill, it's something you got to work on. Matt, you know Matt. So like what I love about Matt Dichter, who is he's a VP of sales now, but he used to be on my team. He's the type of seller that he will take action and he prefers messy action over perfection. And when I started to say, hey, we're going to start adding this he jumped right on it. I've got pictures and I've got pictures of the whiteboard still that he's done. So he picked it up right away. And then I've had a couple others that are really big into it as well.
So I only know of Matt because he's the only person I know that's put up with Dale for a long time in a coaching session. But how do you, sorry, couldn't help myself. Keith, how do you get someone like me who legit has no artistic ability whatsoever? Like I absolutely whiteboard, but like I don't draw. And I think most folks are used to whiteboarding in the sense of words. But I do, like, again, one of the things I found so powerful is the images versus it's just a different way of storytelling. How do you get someone like me to actually learn to do that? And I'm asking for very personal and selfish reasons, to be very clear here.
Yeah. It's funny. I did sales assembly came to me and they were like, hey, could you do a session for whiteboarding for our members? And you'd be surprised how easy it is to do some of the whiteboarding that I do. Like there's 5 shapes. If you can do a circle, a triangle, a square, a line, and a dot, you can basically depict anything because
you lost him at circle. You lost him at circle.
That's the one with 3 points, right?
You'd be surprised. So I went through an exercise with them. And I said, okay, let's take some words that you typically hear in your sales cycle. And I'm going to show you just with those 5 shapes, you can draw whatever you want. So we did things like automation, integration, growth. Like it's really a growth is one line, another line, and then a squiggly arrow. Yeah. It's just, so it's really about building a visual vocabulary. And the thing is, you can use one icon for like, multiple different words. So you don't need an expansive visual vocabulary. So it's a lot easier than you may think. So, maybe we'll spend some time and I'll give you some pointers.
I love it.
Visual vocabulary.
That's a win. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, Keith's setup, at some point you got to see Keith's setup, because he's got this board and it's all black. His setup is like legit.
I like it.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Right to my
Do you use neon blackboard neon markers?
So it's actually this company called Revolution Light Boards. So it's a pane of glass that has lights around it that illuminate it. And then I just have a black backdrop behind me. And the markers are neon. But
I literally pulled this up as we're talking. This is super cool.
Isn't it awesome? They're a great company. The product is awesome. And it's just, I love it. It's, definitely check it out.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
You still lost him at circle, so that could still be an issue.
I mean, listen, it is what it is.
So from a visual vocabulary perspective, so I really like that term. Talk to me a little bit, or talk to the audience a little bit, like, what are 3 things that you've seen change in your sales process or the buyer's reaction to that visual vocabulary? Yeah.
I think one, it's just different, right? I think Corporate Visions did a study a while ago where it was like only 6% of sellers incorporated any type of whiteboarding, and then virtually less than 4%. So right there is a blue ocean, right? If no one else is doing it and you're doing it, that is, you're clearly, you're differentiating yourself there. Also, there's a ton of studies around the way that our brains process images over text, right? It's like 60,000 times faster when you see an image than if you were to read text. And so for me, using visuals just adds more. It adds a differentiator. It makes it easier for people to understand. Because again, I'm not up there drawing a Mona Lisa. I'm drawing squares and circles, and it also helps with memory retention big time. Not only for me, is if I'm planning a talk where I'm going to be using a whiteboard, I've got to plan it out, but the simple visuals help it stick in my brain. And the same is true for a customer. The visuals help with memory retention, which is important as a seller. Like, you want to make sure that you're differentiated. They agree you're differentiated, and they can also remember what you've said amongst all the other competitors that are also buying for their business.
Totally. I love it. I think that there's not enough use of visuals out there. We're used to getting these emails that are, paragraphs long, and these case studies that are paragraphs long. But when you put pictures to it, it simplifies it. I just need to learn to figure out what a circle is. So last question before we get into some rapid fire and wrap it up. Whether you're a startup or whether you are a, established company, like Bullhorn, I think there's, for sellers, this struggle between innovation and perfection of execution, right? Do we ship this now, or do we wait for it to be perfect? Do we make the slide deck perfect, or do we roll with it because we have to go into this meeting? How do you balance that for your team of like, when is good enough and when does it need to be perfect? Yeah. And that's probably one where I can get better at, because I'm a very detail oriented. I don't want to say I have OCD, but if you come to me and you have a PowerPoint that has you have different fonts on it, you forgot to change the font. Yes. Yes.
That drives me wild. So
a Google Doc that has all the wrong, it should be header 2, but it's really header 3, and you think it's okay to ship that. Yeah. We're speaking the same language. Dale, take note.
No, that's why I sent it over to you. I sent it over to my EA to fix it. So it's all good.
Fact.
Yeah. But I really appreciate those people that don't get lost in the details like I do sometimes, where they can just say, I get that, but you're missing the bigger picture. Is we've got to go faster, and we can make the changes along the way to make things better. What we can't do is just be paralyzed saying it needs to be perfect before we actually ship it. And that's something that, like I said, I've struggled with, is it's not perfect yet. We can't do it. where a lot of my other leaders are like, they're already 2 weeks ahead of me because they're not worried about what the colors and the fonts and things look like. They just go ship it and they iterate over time.
Love it. All right. Let's wrap it up with some rapid fire. This was super insightful, certainly for me. But I'm not the one we're trying to please, but I have no doubt that the founders and revenue leaders who are listening are able to get a ton of value out of this. And we'll talk. I'd love to circle back on what we could do with helping some of those folks with visualization. All right. So Dale asked you at the beginning of the show, if you weren't in sales, what part of the revenue ecosystem you would be in. I'm actually going to shift this for a second. Keith, you cannot be in tech. Tech is dead to you. What are you doing for the rest of your life? What job? Where are you going to work? What profession?
This is going to seem really, really weird, but over the weekend, the last 2 weekends, I've been power washing my house. And there's something so satisfying about power washing, like just seeing the dirt go away.
Yeah,
I actually think I would start like a small power washing business. To be honest with you,
I love it. So, little fun fact: we had our house power washed the other day, and I was talking to the guy who owns the company, former tech sales executive, got burnt out, started this business 5 years ago, now has 3 trucks. And according to him, he's like, I make just under $2 million a year. He's like, yes, it's manual, like I'm busting my ass. He's like, but I love it. No one bothers me. The sexiest jobs are not necessarily the ones that pay the most, folks.
Yeah.
That's funny. So we've been talking to a lot of founders lately, but coming back to the sales leaders world, I've enjoyed this question. What song best describes your revenue strategy?
Ooh, man. Maybe All I Do Is Win by DJ Khaled.
Nice. That's Dale's walkout song.
That's right.
Keith, early bird or night owl, man?
Early bird all day. And everybody in my team knows it.
What's the first app you check when you wake up then?
So probably Todoist, which is my task manager. See what's on the agenda for the day.
I tried that app a while ago and never got into it, but I have shit in so many different places that I need to figure something out. What would be the one word to describe your sales career so far? 11 and a half years. You got to sum it down to one word.
Gratitude.
That's a great one.
That's
awesome.
I like it. Okay.
All right, Dale, take us home, man. Yep.
Keith, earlier in the show, you said you were going to be a Rev Ops leader. It's tomorrow morning. What's the first thing you're doing as a Rev Ops leader?
Lowering quotas.
Ooh, like that. Love that. Everyone wants to work for Keith. Keith, I cannot thank you enough for joining us, man. This was super insightful, super helpful. If people want to learn more, they want your visualization tips, and we'll include a link. But for anyone listening who isn't reading the show notes, where can they subscribe to your newsletter? How can they get all these great tips every Saturday?
LinkedIn. Just find me on LinkedIn, Keith Weightman, and it's right up. You can subscribe right there, either in the feature section or I have a link at the top. But yeah,
go subscribe. I'm telling you, I don't read a lot of them. You will get value out of this every single week. Keith, thanks for joining us, man. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
you.